Hello, and thank you for joining me. This is Stacy with SF Johnson Consulting and Construction Services. And today, right now, we're going to go over some terminology for our project scope management class. And keep in mind, we do teach this class specific to each of the trades. What we're seeing here just happens to be for concrete pros, but all of the concepts in terms of the terminology in this case will be the same. Okay, so again, what do we think about when we think about project scope management? Okay, so for any professional, regardless of concrete or otherwise, project scope management involves three processes, no matter the trade, and they're as follows. So the planning process. Okay, so in the planning process, again, the uh, the project is defined, and all of the processes required to make the project come alive are planned and detailed in that process. Okay, so in the planning process, the controlling process, this involves the tracking, managing, and monitoring of the activities. And then the closing process. This is the last part of the project process where we include the audit of the deliverables and looking to see if our result came out as we initially planned. And so, again, we're going to break this class up into about six or so, or maybe more, depending, individual videos where you can review each one individually or go back and review them as we take the class. But here we just want to talk about some important terminology that we want you to certainly remember and make sure you keep in mind when we're talking about talking about some of the subjects related to any of the management project management courses, whether it is schedule management or integration management. A lot of all of the terms apply. So in this case, because this is project scope management specific to this topic, the project scope. Okay, so by definition, it's the work that will be involved in order to deliver the project. The project scope is defined by the following. Okay, so these are the things when we set out to create our project scope, we want to talk about first what are the project objectives? What are we doing? Are we building a home? Is it a commercial building? Is it, whatever time of, I mean, it could be a number of things. Okay, so, but we do have a sample scope and a sample charter that we'll look at that'll give us good details on how to follow that, and then be able to create our own. So, two, second portion are the goals. What are the goals specific to the project? And then three, what are our sub phases? So, in terms of a commercial construction, we could be talking about the, site work phase, and then, the actual building the building, and then finishing it off, and then prepping it, or, the punch list. So, what are the phases that we're going to break the project into? And then the task, number four. And then five, what resources? What are the contractors that are needed? What are the trades that are needed? What is the equipment that's needed? What money is needed? What do we need? Loans, that kind of thing, in order to make it happen. And then the budget, of course, how much is the full project going to cost? And then the hardest thing, I think, for most contractors, where we'll try to make it a little easier piece by piece, is to create a schedule, or the schedule from not only for the project itself, but for the planning stage all the way through our three processes, right? All the way through our schedule related to planning, controlling, and closing. Okay, stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders? Anyone involved in winning or losing, basically, in this project. So a stakeholder could be the owner, right? Or the insurance company, or an investor. All right. Anyone who has an interest in the process or the outcome of the project. So pretty much everyone involved in this project, in one way or another, you can think of them as a stakeholder. Even the contractors that are performing each of the scopes of work, they're a stakeholder, because why? They want to get paid at the end of it, right? So WBS, we have a separate video for this, but this is our work breakdown structure. breaking the project into phases, and then from those phases we're going to break it into subphases and into scopes of work by the end of all of that. So all of the individual scopes of work create the work breakdown structure. Okay, and so it's important in order trade by trade, in order to understand how to break down your trade, right? So that's why we do it for the contractor, for the framer, because depending on your scope of work now, your breakdown is going to be a little different. All right, construction milestones, we all know what that is, but those are dates that absolutely something has to be completed, right? So then we use our Gantt charts in order to see our schedule and forward pass, backward pass, all that stuff to see what dates, what times, when do we absolutely have to have something done, because if the foundation isn't prepped, we can't drop the new walls or something. You know what I mean. I only do it from a desk. Okay. So, deliverables. Those are tangible objects. So the foundation, the full house, the driveway, the whatever you're building is a deliverable. Okay. So I have examples include a report, a permit, or a new home. Okay. Statement of work should include a list of everything needed to create the framework of the project. Okay. Everything needed in order to create the framework of the project. Okay. So framework is different than the details. Okay, framework of the project including project goals, deliverables, features, functions, tasks, deadlines, and costs. Okay, scope of work. Now we know what that is. That's what we're familiar as contractors that do the work. It outlines the work to be done. Okay, details the deliverables, timeline, milestones, and reports. And here's scope creep. Okay, so basically, your scope moves along because if you have your project schedule, right, you want everything to go TYP, right? Typical. You don't want any drawbacks, setbacks. So, scope creep is what happens when you have setbacks and your scope just keeps moving on. We got an extra week, we got to move it up, got to move it up, or got to move it back. Okay, so we want to prevent that. The process of getting off schedule at some point in the project. Okay, this is what happens when the project's not being managed, basically. Okay, so there are ways. You have to be pretty much a construction Karen to keep your project. But again, somebody's paying you to keep it on task, to keep it on budget. And so you want to avoid scope creep at every possibility. Construction risks any threat to the process of completion of the project, right? So we always want to do a risk assessment when we know what we're going to do. All right, you do that in life, okay? You do that going to Walmart. Let me do a risk assessment. Where's the exits? Okay, now look way in front of you. So what could I be talking about? Know what your possible risks are when you are doing anything in life, let alone the project. So any threat to the process of completion is a risk. And then a mitigation strategy. Like I said, going to Walmart, you want to know where the exit is. Okay? So mitigation strategy is reducing the probability of consequence of an adverse risk to a satisfactory threshold. Okay, that's a lot of lingo. But basically, you want to mitigate in real terms. Say, for instance, your roof blew off and blew a hole, or a tornado, right? And your roof came off. Well, you're going to mitigate the damage by going out and putting a tarp on the roof, right? Because if you don't, additional water is going to come in. You're going to cause more damage to the interior of the home, blah, blah, blah. That's mitigation. And so you want to know in every step, if this happens, what do we do? You want to always have a strategy. I'm sure there are GCs that don't do it this detailed, but if you want to make big money and control substantial amounts of money in terms of construction, you got to have these things in order, and you have to know, at least, have a plan. And then the scope management plan itself, the processes that are in place to make sure the project includes all the necessary tasks. So this plan is concerned with dealing with how the scope is explained, developed, structured, and verified. Okay, so those are the important parts of that. Is the plan helps us to do those things in the end. How are we going to explain it? We're going to develop it. How we're going to structure it, and then how we're going to verify that the things that we have planned are actually done. So, project scope management involves all of these things. Okay, and so plan scope management, the process of creating a scope management plan that documents how the project and project scope will be defined, validated, and controlled. Okay, so collecting requirements. These are all part of what is necessary in order to build your full scope. Okay, and again, most contractors are they're narrow in when I say scope, they only think scope of work. Okay, but no, this is the process. Okay, that documents how the project and the project scope will be defined, validated, and controlled. Okay, so collect requirements. These are the things you have to do. The process of determining, documenting, and managing stakeholder needs and requirements to meet project objectives. Okay, so this is typically just supposed to be terminology, not the full class, but this is part of what we do in the full class is go over each of these and how do we go about determining, documenting, and managing stakeholder needs. There are specific tasks in each one of those processes that we can break down even further. Okay, but in general, collecting the requirements is the process of that. Okay, defining the scope. The process of developing a detailed description of the project and product. Okay, create the WBS. Okay, that's the biggest, most challenging part because we know we have to build the wall. We can even determine by the cost estimate how many days it's going to take. But then when we have to integrate the rebar with the masonry with the concrete truck, and how do we break all of that down in a way that we can translate that paperwork into actual people coming and going and things being done in an efficient manner. Okay, so the first part of that is to create the WBS, which is the process of subdividing project deliverables and project work into smaller, more manageable components. So, right, if we're going to the basically your scopes of work create your WBS. Okay, and we create our scopes of work by breaking down our construction documents, right? Doing the takeoffs, the cost estimates, because once we do the cost estimates and we do all that, we know how long each individual process in our project. And now I'm specifically talking about building the building, but there's an amount of time it is going to take also to write up the contracts for all of the contractors. So that is part of this. There's the amount of time it takes to order all of the material if you have a national supplier. That's part of this. Okay, so define scope. WBS validate scope. What's the process? These are all like, okay, these are things we have to do. So what's the process that we're going to use in order to do it? And again, to control the scope. What's the process that we're going to do? The process of monitoring, how we're going to go about doing it. Okay, so these are all larger items, right, that we are creating a process for. Okay, and in our class, we will have a sample scope management plan and a sample of everything to go over that. So, 7 steps. Okay, and these are the 7 steps that we're going to be going over in the next video. But again, this is our project scope management plan, part of our project management series. I am Stacy Johnson, the owner and operator of SF Johnson Consulting and Construction Services. Owner and operated since 2010 for your approval. and most likely disapproval sometimes because I'm smart. So, join us next time. I probably could have left that part out, but I really do enjoy teaching people from everywhere. And as a matter of fact, people listen to these videos from about 8 different countries. So I'm very pleased that I am helping people all over. So let's join together for the next class where we're going to discuss the project charter and the 7 steps to making a scope management plan. Thank you very much. And visit us at www.s as in Sam, F as in Frank, Johnson Consulting.com. See you next time.